So true.
So the question is now burning through the Charlottesville area whether or not you could be able to ban the use of a cell phone recorder on a school property. I know there are states where, in the area where police activity is taking place, it's technically illegal to have your cell phones powered up. I think Maryland has a law on its books like that. Not so much that they're going to stop your car and take a look at your cell phone, but if video appeared from your cell phone, then obviously you would be in violation of that law. Joining us now is one of our dear friends and a great civil rights attorney when it comes to breaking this stuff down. He is Scott Goodman. Scott, thank you, sir, and I appreciate it. What is your take on whether or not this is something that could actually happen, and what would the legislation look like?
Well, schools, they don't need legislation to ban cell phones and videotaping at school. They can do that. That could be a school policy, which they apparently have in Charlottesville. There's a school policy, a school board policy, and a school rule on each of the school division's properties that people can't film on the school property. Now, they can't just ban certain types of filming. They can't say, well, this group can film and that group can't. If they have a rule against it, then that has to apply to everyone. They can't pick and choose either for reasons of politics or any other reason that certain groups can do what other groups can't do. But definitely a school can say, we do not allow people to use their cell phones to record or to show any kind of video from a school property. They can do that.
So what then winds up being the recourse of somebody who perhaps sees something that is serious and going on, and wants to get it on videotape, and get it recorded, as Ronald Reagan once said, "I'm paying for this microphone, sir." Is this the case where they're telling the citizens that they ask for the tax money for this school, that they don't have the same civil rights somebody 100 yards away on the street might have?
Well, yeah, I mean, school property is different from just being on the street. There is an interest that the schools have in protecting young people and protecting children from being filmed. There are all kinds of, as you can imagine, people who don't have any business being around children, sex
Mm-hmm.
offenders, other people with other types of, just frankly speaking, perverted types of imaginations and inclinations and proclivities from being on a school grounds and having the opportunity to film somebody else's children. So all parents, I think, understand that. If someone actually is on school property with their phone and they see something that truly is newsworthy, and something that they don't think should be hidden, then they'll just break the school rule. They'll just break the rule and film it, and somehow it'll get into somebody else's hands, and it'll come out, just like happened in this situation at Johnson School,
So
where
there's, if I understand then correctly, it's a school policy, but it's not a law.
right.
There's no criminal charge that could come from this.
That's right. And I don't think it's really been something that's received so much attention up until now, because there
Hmm.
have been many things that happen in school where parents have wanted to record their children,
Sure.
their school plays, dance recitals, and dance performances,
Hmm.
chorus, many things at the gym. Parents are often filming at Albemarle High School, Charlottesville High School,
Sure.
their kids' football games, their basketball games. That's on school property.
Hmm.
So I think the schools, if they really want to have a policy like this, they're going to have to give some thought to a policy that's going to pass muster. And again, not just say, well, this group of parents can film and this group of parents can't film. I don't think it's clear enough right now. And so they do leave themselves open to a challenge, since it's apparently permitted for some things, but they say not for others.
Well, and I know policy notwithstanding, I think Charlottesville schools bungled the response because while parents were in a mixed camp regarding the content of the event that was recorded, simply saying we are disappointed that the video got out seemed to fumble the ball a little bit when it came to narrative on this. Do you
There's no
think?
doubt about that. They certainly did. They shifted all of the attention and all of the anger toward the fact that a video got out, as opposed to actually sitting down and explaining what it was going on at that school. So yes, they did fumble, I think, the response.
So what would the right way forward be, Scott, if you were advising as an attorney, for the schools to come up with a better policy, should Governor Youngkin get involved and the Department of Education in this? Should the City Council get involved in this?
Well, I'm not sure that the governor should get involved or the legislature, because each school division, they have different philosophies. Some school divisions might not see it the way others. In Northern Virginia, it might be different than the way the people in Southwest Virginia or in Southern Virginia or maybe in the Richmond area would look at it. So I don't think there's a statewide solution to this, but each school board is empowered to enact their own policies that comport with the philosophy of the citizens that live in that area. And I do think that the schools are going to have to delineate and be very specific about when cell phones are allowed to be kept by visitors on school grounds and when they're not. They may very well say that people that are attending a sporting event or people who are attending a choral or drama presentation are allowed to do it. But other than that, they have to have specific permission. It looks like, again, from the video that took place at Johnson School, it's difficult to know what type of people were allowed to be there. It could very well have been a staff member. And if a staff member is seen or known or found out to have been the person that disseminated the video, that would be a violation of the school rules that employees are governed by. So you have one set of rules for employees, which perhaps may be stricter than the rules are for parents. So I think that the schools are going to have to decide and write down, so it's very well known and it's very clear to people when they can film at school. You could have a situation where somebody's coming to school just to speak to a teacher and see something that they might think is cute in another classroom and then just reach in and film something so they can show somebody something. That type of uncontrolled, discretionary filming is something that schools probably would not want to permit. And you may have to actually check your phone at the office before you can go further into the building. That's certainly the way that many courts handle it. Because courts are public buildings too. And we've heard judges say many times they don't want to see what is going on in a courtroom appearing on YouTube or in social media, because in courtrooms, people get very emotional. There are very sensitive things discussed. And especially so in the juvenile courtroom where children come up and their domestic situations involving domestic partners. We just don't have it in court. And so phones in many courts are required to be left outside. Some judges allow phones inside the courtroom, but they have to be turned off. So you see, even in courts, the rules are different, and that's likely to be the way it is at schools too, depending on how the school boards and the school administrators feel about it.
The reason I brought up, Scott, the governor, is that I believe there's now state policy regarding parental notification of explicit materials there and parental approvals. Is the Charlottesville School Division in danger of being found in violation of those policies regarding giving parents permission to know that explicit materials might be shared with their student, especially I think these were fourth graders?
Yes. Now, of course, then you get into the very tricky definition of what's explicit material. As I understand it, at Johnson School, they had a gay pride celebration or commemoration, and they had an alphabet using various letters of the alphabet, which are related to certain things that are in the gay community and the LGBTQ community. And so, is that explicit? Could they simply say that they're teaching the alphabet? Using this way? Of course, there are many other ways you teach the alphabet. It certainly is going to be determined to be inappropriate to a lot of parents, but it's difficult to prove that that was explicit material. It's certainly a material that many parents don't want their children to be exposed to, and that's why it's important for people to get involved and speak to the school board. If there is enough of an outcry, if there's enough of opposition to these types of things happening in the schools really have to hear from the parents. And that's one thing that doesn't happen here enough. We know that there's some elections coming up for school board in Charlottesville where there are actually more open seats than there are candidates. If people are exercised about this, if people really do have strong opinions about it, people need to step forward, because it is within the power of the Charlottesville School Board to change the policy or to enact new policies to prohibit these types of events from happening in school, and for the school system to say that we're not going to have a gay pride celebration ceremony in an elementary school. You certainly wouldn't have it in Louisa County or in Augusta County
Mm-hmm.
at an elementary school, but those philosophies, again, in those locations are different than the philosophy that is prevalent in the city of Charlottesville, at least within the school board and the school administration. But it's not fixed that it's always going to be that way. It depends on who is making the rules,
Mm-hmm.
who is involved, who has the
Who's
power,
setting the
sits
policies?
on the school board. And so people, if they really do feel upset about some of the things that are going on in the school system, someone has to
Yeah.
have the courage to step forward and get allies to also run so that their
Mm-hmm.
philosophy can rule the day in the school system.
And
That,
and speak out in those ways. You're absolutely right about that, Scott. Last question for you, and I appreciate your time on the subject for this. The issue of police cameras and classroom cameras. This came up a couple of years ago in a congressional race. I think you and I talked about it, where one of the congressional candidates actually wound up winning the congressional seat, suggested that there be cameras in every classroom. That parents with a special login could tap into at any time to just check in on what's going on in the classroom and in the schools. Is this something that may resurface as something, Scott?
it very well could. If enough parents ask for it, if enough parents demand it, it will happen. That's that again, it goes down to what the school board's policy is with regard to cameras in the classroom. And if enough parents demand it, I'm sure there'll be pushback by many teachers and even by some other parents. But if enough people say they want it, and those people gain the control of the school board, they become school board members and say, we want to be able to see that, then it can happen. There's no law that
Mm-hmm.
prohibits a school system from saying we want to have cameras in the classroom.
Okay.
And when we have children at daycare centers, there are cameras in all of these places, even in pet shelters. When people take their dogs to doggy daycare, these places, there are cameras there. They want to be able to see their
Mm-hmm.
animal. It can certainly be done also with their children if that's
Right.
what the school system wants. It's going to have to depend on each group of parents that feel that way, feeling strongly enough about it to do something about it and not just talk about it.
Yeah,
And
I think.
there's certainly good reasons for parents who would want to be able to click on and see what's going on in their
Mhm.
child's classroom.
Yeah, the phrase nanny cam comes to mind long before any of this discussion, probably almost a decade ago. Scott, thank you so much again for taking your time and answering some of my questions.
Okay, thank you for having me.